We've spent a lifetime living someone else's life. How do we in our 30s or our 20s or our 40s or our 50s, how do we just decide, oh, I'm going to start finding out what my life is?
Yes, absolutely. And I love the tone you're sharing this in, Rangan, because my tone's the same. Like, I'm not coming at this from a point of view of, we're wasting our lives or I've got it figured out. Like I don't want to make this about you not getting your goals or not having pursuits or not wanting to become something, because I want to do all those things too, but it's about why you're doing it. And it's also about making sure they're truly motivated by your inner desire, right? Like that's the point. It's like, if you want to drive a BMW because that's the car you love. Don't drive it because you think. If you want to be a doctor, become a doctor because you think that's how you're going to serve humanity, not because you think people will be impressed. If you want to go to Harvard or Princeton or Oxford or Cambridge, go there because you really want to study how to solve the world's problems, not because you think it looks good on your resume, right? That's the point that we're going after. So thank you, Rangan, for like recentering that tonal piece. And I appreciate it. So where do we start? One of my favorite ways to start is looking at what we value. And values are a very intangible word. And so there's a very easy way to figure out what you value. There's two things you have to look at. You look at how you spend your money, the most painful thing you can possibly do. Go through your bank statement and look at where your money is being spent. That is what you value. The other thing that we spend, just like we spend money, is how we spend our time. Those are the two most perfect ways to see what you currently value. Your value isn't what's in your head, isn't what's in your heart, it isn't what's in your mind. It's how you spend your money and how you spend your time. And so, just to give you an overview, and I share this in the book, that research was done on how we spend our time. And the research showed that we spend 33 years in bed, right? 33 years of our life in bed. And 7 years of that is spent trying to sleep, not even sleeping, right? We spend 1 year and 4 months exercising across our whole lives. These are, by the way. We spend more than 3 years on vacation. And we spend a bunch of days trying to get ready, and we spend a bunch of time, standing in lines and queues. And so much of our time just gets spent. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, where am I currently spending my time? And where do I want to spend it? Now, studies also show that everyone has to go to work. So this isn't about what you do for work. People who had more meaningful, purposeful lives and were healthier, wealthier, and wise invested their time in education over entertainment. And Rangan, your audience is lucky because they get education and entertainment in one place. But that's the goal, right? Like that's the goal, that you're creating an opportunity for people to find education. The smartest, the wealthiest, the most healthiest, the wisest people in the world were reading books, watching documentaries, taking courses, listening to podcasts, learning to better themselves. And so that's the first place to start. The second place, when we look at that value audit, is I want you to write down 3 things that you're currently pursuing in life. It might be a promotion, it might be a new home, whatever it is that you are currently pursuing. And then I want you to ask this question. Is that your desire and your dream, or is it coming from something outside of you? Is it coming from a pressure of a family member? Is it coming from an expectation because your friend just bought something? Where is that desire truly coming from? And the third and final question you want to ask yourself is, do I still want to pursue that? Or do I want to change how I pursue it? Or do I not want to pursue it at all? And if you go through that 3-step questioning process, you'll get to the truth of what you truly want to pursue and stop yourselves from building a sandcastle which the waves of time will eventually wash away. And so that's what we get lost doing. We get lost building castles that we don't even want to live in.
Yeah. It's so profound. And, I really think that there's something unique about the times in which we live now. There really is this dissatisfaction, this lack of contentment. You put it so beautifully at the start of this conversation. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Minimalism.
I haven't actually, no.
Or not, which I think you'd absolutely love it. I really, really enjoy it. I've seen it a couple of times. I've watched it with my kids again recently. But again, it's these two guys in their 30s who, they've got success by society's definition. They've got the job, they're earning good money, but there's a hole inside. There's a feeling of, is this all there is to life? And so I really think you're tapping on something that is really out there at the moment, and really, if people can get their heads around this, I think it can transform their own lives, but also transform the lives of the people around them, which I think is really, really exciting. Now, you called it a value audit. Now, I thought that word was really interesting because I have been I had sort of nearly 3 weeks off social media until 2 days ago. Like I didn't post, I went off that, I made a thing of it, and I found that I found it a lot easier to go inward in my life. It was just one thing to switch off a bit of noise for me. That I'm not saying everyone has to do this. It's just something I personally find useful. And I also I think it's a nice example to set to people that you can do it if you want to. But what was really interesting is I've been doing a values exercise with myself. I've been trying to write down 5 core values that I want to live my life by. And it really struck me that a lot of people, and I would probably include myself in this, have got an idea of what we think our values are. But unless we actually go and audit the process of what are we spending our time and money doing, we have no idea if we really are living those values. So I really like the term audit because it's not your perception of how you think you're actually spending your money or spending your time. It's the reality of it. And I think it's something that I haven't done it. And I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to actually see, is it aligned with what you say you stand for? Are you actually spending time like that? So is this a common thing, do you think, for people that they have there is a gap between their desired values and their actual values?
I genuinely believe, first of all, Rangan, thank you for sharing that too. And I genuinely believe that people are well-intentioned and want to do good in the world. I believe that. I believe that people have a good heart. They're smarter than we think they are. They want to do good in the world and they want to put out good energy. But you're exactly right that intention needs to be converted and transferred into real behavior. And this is where you'll find, you'll hear a friend or someone say, I really value loyalty and I really don't like gossip. And then you find out that person was gossiping about you. And how does that feel? It completely feels like someone's broken your trust. And so often the way we see ourselves or want to see ourselves is amplified compared to how we actually behave. So we'll spot something, and there's a beautiful story that I share in the book, and there's lots of these across the book. But there's these old ancient Indian and Zen stories, and there's this story of the evil king that goes to meet a good king. So the evil king goes to the castle, the quarters of the good king, and the good king, being a good king, invites the evil king inside for some dinner. They sit down. The servers bring out the plates. The plates are placed in front of the evil king and the good king, and they're just about to eat. And just about as they're about to eat, the evil king switches the plates. And the good king goes, what's going on? Like, is that some ceremony in your time? Like, look, why are we doing this? And the evil king goes, well, I don't know. You might have poisoned my food. You might be trying to kill me. You might have poisoned it. And the good king just bursts out laughing. He's just like, really? Like, come on. I've invited you over for dinner. Like, this is my team, whatever it is, let's start eating right now. And just about as he's about to eat, the evil king swaps it back again. And the good king goes, well, now what then? And he goes, well, I don't know. You might be double bluffing me. And that night, the evil king doesn't eat. The good king happily eats his plate. The point is that so often we think we don't have some of the mistakes that we make, but we see them in everyone else. We see those mistakes in other people. So we'll say, oh, this person's not doing this right, or I don't like the way he or she talked to that person. But if we really do an audit in ourselves, we'll realize that we have a lot of those same challenges and feelings that we may think others have. And so for me, it's sometimes a really scary and daunting task to do that values audit. But it truly, truly is a beautiful process that we all need to go through to really realign our map and get our compass right and start moving in the right direction.
I mean, is it the sort of thing that people do once, or is it the sort of thing that people should revisit? And I guess, you know, if I was to ask you, when was the last time you did that exercise on yourself?
Yeah, great question. So I'd say that you have to revisit like gardening. If you look at your garden outside, and I can see a light little glimpse of Rangan's garden. But if you have a garden, how often do you have to garden? Maybe you mow the lawn, I don't know, once a week, once a month. I don't know, you know, whatever you...
Yeah, I'd say once a week, probably. I like a nice, you know, shortish lawn. I don't like it when it gets too long, so...
There you go, once a week. And so I'd say that you have to treat this exercise like gardening, because when you do a values audit, what you're really doing is gardening your values. And what that means is you're pulling out the weeds and you're planting new seeds. That's really the activity that's happening here. You're planting seeds in your mind, values that are good values, that are going to grow into fruits and trees and give shade to others and help other people. Or if you don't garden once a month, let's say Rangan he doesn't bother for the last 6 months during COVID, he just lets it be there. What's going to happen? That garden's going to be full of weeds. It's going to be full of stuff that he doesn't want there, right? It might attract bugs or other things that are there that he doesn't want. And that's what happens with our values, that after a while, our values start to attract dust. They start to attract being covered over by so many other desires. So I would say it's a regular habit. I'd say that I do a refining values and intention exercise on myself about 3 times a week. I used to do it every day, but probably about 3 times a week. And I'm not saying anyone has to do it that often. I do it that often because I feel I live a life that is constantly moving, constantly challenging, and I'm presented with a lot of options and opportunities that I never imagined I'd have. And so I have to really train my mind to focus on these value audits. But I also know that every year I spend 2 or 3 weeks, and I go back to the monastery in India and I spend time in the ashram with monks. And so I feel this is both an activity that happens weekly or monthly. I'd say once a month. I'd say the best way is to treat it like your accounts and your taxes. Look at it every month. Look at your bank statement every month. And then once a year, when you have to do your taxes and you're going through that tax return and getting it all right, you kind of do a deep dive on it. So I'd say if everyone could spend 3 days a year, 5 days a year going really deep, and then 1 hour a month, a couple of hours a month, that would be a great way to build it into your practice.
Yeah, now I just want to contrast it with taxes and accounts, which can often be quite tedious and, tear your hair out type exercises for people full of pressure. I would sort of say that the kind of practices that your book is jam-packed full of practical tools for people, once you get into this way of thinking, once you start thinking like a monk, these practices become fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And
yeah,
I think,
for sure.
Like a lot of, as a doctor, one of the things that frustrates me is that everything around health, well, let's say working out, for example, tends to be around, punishing yourself and pushing yourself and suffering. And so we start to associate things that are good for us as being difficult and as being punishing. But actually, all the tools in your book are going to be good for everyone. They're really going to help people. But I would actually say that they're fun. And if I just speak to my own experience over the last 7 years of really, again, since my dad died, diving into personal growth, not because it was like, oh, dad's not here, now I'm going to do some personal growth. No, it was just in the trauma of dad's death, in the sort of emptiness I felt afterwards. That's where I went. I sort of needed that pain on one level to then get me to start asking questions. But I love the process of getting to know myself better. I love doing these audits. I love trying to figure out my values. I like potentially almost getting addicted to it. Like it feels good. And then you start to switch off from the the noise around you, and you really start to become tuned in to who you are and what makes you tick.
Learning about ourselves is actually the most fun thing in the world. It's the most enjoyable thing in the world. When you find out about a new way that your mind works and how this value is going to unlock this opportunity in your life, Rangan's spot on. It's such a exciting thing to do.
If you enjoyed that clip, here's another powerful clip that I think you are really going to enjoy.
It is the quality of our relationships that determines the quality of our lives. The story is never just created by one person. It's a co-creation. The way I speak is influenced by the way you listen. The way I see myself is influenced by the way you see me.